So see you. I'm glad to see you, dear students, again. So let's continue our lesson. So right now I'm going to demonstrate you a video, a short video about contrast and compare style of writing essay. So if you are ready, so let's start our lesson.
Hello, and thank you for viewing my presentation on the comparison and contrast essay. Let's get started. What is comparison and contrast? To compare is to identify similarities, while to contrast is to identify differences. In college writing, compare and contrast are often used together to test your ability to express complex, critical thought and organizational processes in writing. Some topics are simple, such as comparing and contrasting cats and dogs. Some, like charter schools versus public schools, are more complex. Okay, so we use comparison and contrast in everyday situations. Whenever you go to a grocery store or you pass by a fast food restaurant and you wonder to yourself, should I get Burger King or should I just make my own burger at home? At home, can I get the same quality as the burger at Burger King? That's making a comparison, right? When you go to the grocery store, should I buy generic toilet tissue or should I buy the brand name Scott tissue? Are they basically both the same? The price is different? Is the quality the same or is the quality different? In either of these situations, you are using comparison and contrast. So this is a skill that is common to you. Okay, cats and dogs have been domesticated for centuries. Let's pretend that this is a topic that we're dealing with. Well, you might say cats are good at catching mice, unlike dogs. Is this a comparison or a contrast?
Okay, can you give an answer to this question? Is it a comparison or contrast? Can you give your answer to this question?
In my opinion, first sentence, cats and dogs have been domesticated for centuries. It's comparison, maybe.
Okay, we are talking about second topic.
Second topic
Is it comparison or contrast?
Contrast.
Yeah,
It's contrast.
So, dear students, dear monitor, where are your other two students? We have left only four. You have left only 14. Please inform them to be connected.
Well, in the first case, you have a comparison. And in the second case, you have a contrast. In the first bullet, cats and dogs have been domesticated for centuries. Your clue word is and, right? Similarities, comparison. In the second bullet, cats are good at catching mice, unlike dogs. Your clue word.
What is your clue in that case, in the second case?
Unlike.
Unlike, yeah.
Yes.
Unlike, yeah. Unlike differentiates cats from dogs. Okay.
Word is unlike, meaning they are different in some particular way. In this case, at catching mice. Let's look at the third bullet. Cats and dogs often do not get along with one another. Would this be a comparison or contrast statement?
Okay, is it a comparison or contrast statement, dear students? The third one we are talking about. Cats and dogs are often do not get along with one another. Yeah, comparison. Mostly it's a comparison, yes. Both of them often do not get along with one another, yes?
Yes.
Only some of them come along with each other.
If you said comparison, you are correct. Cats and dogs, clue word and, both do not get along with each other. That's something they have in common, right? So that would be a point of comparison, or finding the similarities between two different objects. Let's look at the next bullet. Cats can usually keep themselves clean, but people have to wash their dogs. Again, is this a statement of comparison or contrast?
I'm sorry.
Contrast.
I wasn't too quick enough.
Contrast. Your clue word is but. Cats clean themselves, but this different thing happens with dogs. So that is a point of contrast. Cats usually do not like water, but many dogs like to swim.
Okay.
Contrast.
Contrast. Why?
Don't like. You dogs like.
Don't like
Yeah.
dogs. Dogs like. Okay.
Looks like
Clue
Yes.
word of
But.
contrast.
But
but.
But. Okay.
but
So, is this comparison or contrast? Contrast. Cats don't like water, but dogs do like water. This is a point of difference or a point of contrast. So in this simple exercise, we're getting you geared up to pinpoint comparison and then to determine points of contrast. Okay, so let's look at this exercise. You might want to pause the video here so you can jot down your answers on a piece of scratch paper. Here are the directions. Write yes next to the topic if you would use comparison or contrast. No if you would not use either of them. So no means you would not use this technique of comparison and contrast at all for this particular topic. Let's do the first one together. What did you do last Thanksgiving? Is this a topic that you would use comparison and contrast on? You decide and write down your answer. Again, you might want to pause the video here and complete the exercise.
Okay, dear students, you may complete the exercise by writing yes or no. And dear students, when you are giving an answer, please try to give the improvements. Okay. So I think it would be better if I give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I will give you 7 minutes.
Okay, teacher.
Ағай шығып кеткен ба?
Жоқ, шыққан жоқ ағай.
Тыныштап.
We have finished it.
Finish it?
Finish it.
Mhm. Okay, who would like to start?
May I start?
Yes.
First question, what did you do last Thanksgiving? From my
Mhm.
point of view, this sentence doesn't include any comparison or contrast because there is nothing to compare here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Answer is
What
no.
about next one?
May I?
Second.
Yoda?
May I? Okay. Where would you rather live, in an apartment or house? From in my opinion, this sentence includes compare, because apartment and house, this is not a similar, this is a contrast. It includes contrast, apartment and house.
It's the differences between apartment and a
Yes,
house.
yes.
Mhm.
Differences. That is why contrast.
Contrast,
Mhm.
yes.
May I?
Okay.
Can I?
Can I?
Uldana.
Which is the better, working days or working nights? I think it's a contrast because working days and working nights, it's differences between work days and
Mhm.
nights.
May I answer to the next question?
Okay, Chopin.
Yes. How do you heat up a can of soap? From a point of view, there is no any compare or contrast.
Okay. I am Hazel.
Can I?
Next one.
I am Hazel.
May I, teacher?
Hazel, I am. I see that she is off,
Yes.
that she's gone. That's why
Can I, teacher?
I am asking.
May I, teacher?
Okay. So Nazirke.
What movies do you like better, comedies or action movies?
Mhm.
I think it also can be contrast and compare
Mhm.
both of them, maybe.
So you can compare similarities and you can give differences. Yeah, you can
Differences,
have
yes.
contrast. Okay, let's continue watching.
Okay, hopefully you took a moment to complete that exercise. And now let's look at the answer.
So, how do you think? Are our answers the same?
Yes.
Yes.
Of
Okay.
course.
First. The first one, what did you do last Thanksgiving? No, that would not work for a comparison and contrast essay. Where would you rather live, in an apartment or house? Remember, for comparison and contrast, you are trying to find the similarities and or differences between at least two different objects. So in order for this to work, you need to have at least two objects that you can stand next to each other and find points of similarities and points of difference. You can do that with an apartment as opposed to a house. You have different reasons for wanting to live in an apartment than you would for wanting to live in a house. For example, yard space. Do you have that in an apartment complex? Maybe you do. Or would you have more yard space in a house? See where we're going with that? All right, next, which is better, working days or working nights? Would you rather work in the daytime or work at night? Yes, you could do comparison and contrast on this topic. How do you heat up a can of soup? Well, no, you can't go anywhere with that as far as comparison and contrast, can you? Notice you don't have two different objects either that you're looking at similarities and differences on. Lastly, what movies do you like better, comedies or action movies? Well, yes, you could stack up comedies against action movies and find points of comparison and contrast. So, hopefully, once again, this is getting you in the groove of thinking about what is a comparison, similarities, and what are differences or contrasts. Okay, let's look at some words and key phrases that might help you identify when to use the compare and contrast technique. You might see in an essay prompt the words compare and contrast, which make it really easy. But you might see similarities and differences, which means the same thing. If you are, let's say, writing an essay for the GRE and you see the phrase relative merits, advantages and disadvantages, or evaluate, same thing, comparison and contrast. You're wanting to use this technique when you see these phrases. All right, which do you prefer? That also suggests a comparison and contrast. Which is better? It also suggests that you have to choose between two objects. Where would you rather? Which is easier, harder, or more difficult? However, whenever you see these keywords and phrases, then this is what the prompt is asking you to do, to use this technique of comparison and contrast. Okay, now let's take a look at how you might begin to structure. Comparison and contrast essays can get a little off track, especially if you do not organize them properly on the front end. Let me show you what I mean by this. Let's say you have novel A and you have novel B. So for novel A, you decide you want to talk about minor characters, major characters, and themes. Well, you would need to do the same for novel B, minor characters, major characters, and themes. So you have the same points of comparison for both objects. That's important to remember. This is what you would not do. Novel A, minor characters, major characters, and plot. Novel B, you begin to talk about the author's life, major characters, and symbolism. This is wrong. You don't have points of comparison and contrast to form a good basis for this particular type of essay. Otherwise, your organization is off, your structure is wrong, and you do not have a true comparison and contrast essay. So again, you would need to fix these things in order to have a good basis for your comparison and contrast essay. Okay, let's move on. Here's a subject by subject structure. So let's say for subject A, you're talking about television marketing, subject B, radio marketing, because you have to have two different objects in a comparison and contrast essay. So point 1, men, women, children under subject A. Same thing under subject B, men, women, and children. This is your basis of comparison and or contrast. All right, let's take a look at the greenish colored circle here. First of all, A, television. So in a subject by subject structure, you're going to talk about all of A first. All of A. Men, women, children, television marketing, you talk about all of that first. You do not mix and match with point B. All of A comes first in your essay. So you're talking about television marketing first and only television marketing. When you completely talk about television marketing and you get done talking about television marketing in regards to children, you're going to transition into radio marketing, which is subject B. Then you're going to talk all about radio marketing between men, women, and children. Again, you do not mix and match A and B, meaning you don't talk about A first and then B. That's another organizational structure. And this subject by subject structure, you talk all about A first, your first object, and then you talk all about B, or your second object. Here's a potential thesis to tie both of these together. Although television and radio are distinctly different media,
they use similar strategies to appeal to their audiences. So you would have to figure out what those similar strategies are in regards to men. Let's say, let me help you out here. Let's say for men on television marketing, when it comes to men, commercials targeted to men, sometimes they use sexy females and sometimes sexy female voices. Well, in radio marketing, they often use sexy female voices when they are targeting men. So radio is not a visual medium, but you still have sexy voices television marketing, sexy voices radio marketing when it comes to men. All right, let's continue. Here's another organizational structure where you organize by points. Depending on your topic, this might be the organizational structure to use. In this one, you are able to talk about A and then B, A and then B, A and then B. So point one, let's again say that both television and radio use sexy female voices in advertising targeted towards men. That's point one. Well, you will talk about how television marketing uses sexy voices, and then you'll talk about how radio marketing uses sexy female voices when it comes to marketing towards men. So you have your point, whatever your point is, sexy female voices, and then you talk about how they do it in TV and then how they do it in radio. And here's yet a third option on how to organize your comparison and contrast essay. You might want to talk about all of the similarities between subject A and subject B. Then you might want to talk about all of the differences between subject A and subject B. Depending on what your topic is, it might be a little easier to organize your points according to all of the similarities and then all of the differences. So again, your topic will help you decide which organizational structure to use. And again, it is absolutely essential for you to get this clear on the front end before you just jump into trying to write a comparison and contrast essay.
Гениальности можно научиться.
Okay, just I beg your pardon. I think that's the advertisement, yes?
В волшебстве есть система.
Okay.
So you've got to plan your ideas. How do you go about doing that? Well, let's say you want to talk about coffee versus tea. You come up with this point. This is brainstorming. This is an example of brainstorming where you just list out ideas for each. So you have your ideas for coffee. Coffee is good for breakfast. Coffee is made from a bean. Coffee contains caffeine. Coffee is good hot or cold. Coffee has a strong flavor. Then you make a list for tea. What can you say about tea? Well, tea is good for breakfast. Tea is made from a leaf. Tea contains caffeine. Tea is good hot or cold. Tea has a mild flavor. Do you see any similarities between the two? You said coffee and tea are good for breakfast. Those are similarities. You said coffee and tea contain caffeine. More similarities. You said coffee and tea are good hot or cold. More similarities. Now, what are the points of contrast? Yes, those are the ones highlighted in bold. So depending on how you want to go about writing your essay, you might want to focus on the points of similarities, or you might want to talk about the differences between the two. So let's take it a bit further. Now that you have your topic, and now that you have brainstormed and listed some ideas regarding coffee and tea, how might you go about choosing a structure for it? So again, we have listed all of our similarities in one column, and then listed all of the differences in the next column. See that there are more similarities than there are differences. Here's a potential thesis. The aroma and texture are different, but America's favorite hot beverages share more similarities than differences. For this thesis statement, you're going to focus on the similarities, right? Could you focus only on the differences? Yes, you could. Should you do both? Well, depending on how long your essay needs to be, how complex it needs to be, you could potentially talk about both the similarities and the differences. So that's up to you and what the essay assignment calls for you to do. And it also depends on how much work you feel like doing and how much work you are required to do. Okay, here's some key points to remember. Comparison and contrast must be organized effectively. I cannot stress that enough. Choose an identifiable essay structure before writing. If you do not, your essay will get confusing and your instructor will probably tell you you lost it here. You were talking about this, then you started talking about that, and they're not true comparison and contrast between these two objects. So organize first. Your points must be parallel between both subjects. Some essays might concentrate only on similarities. As in the previous example, you could just focus only on the similarities between coffee and tea. Some essays might focus only on contrast or differences, or you could just focus only on the differences and not talk about similarities at all. Some essays might include both similarities and differences, again, depending on the topic and the complexity of your topic. Okay, hopefully that.
Okay, dear students. So if you want